Have you seen an upturn in demand for woodland burials?
There has been a demand for woodland burials. I wouldn't say there's an upturn. I think there's a certain section of the community that would like to see a carbon replacement. So a body goes into the ground and a tree's planted in replacement, so carbon replacement. I think the other thing is that, as you quite rightly say, here we are in the midst of Somerset, and of course we've got a thriving willow industry down on the levels, and all our willow coffins come from there. And it's an interesting thing, you know, when you're talking to people about their funeral, and even if it's a cremation, you know, if they want a willow coffin, there's nothing, wild horses won't drag them away from that willow coffin. It's really quite interesting. And I know one lady, a couple of ladies actually, but this one particular lady, she said, you know, myself and my mum, we were never that close. You know, I'm more rock and roll, heavy metal, and she's more Mozart and Beethoven. I said, oh, right, okay. So how can we find a way of bringing you two closer together? And she said, well, you know, I've been insistent upon a willow coffin. I said, yeah. So if I could organise it so that you help the weaver weave the coffin, would that help you come closer to your mother? Oh, that's marvellous. What a wonderful idea. So off she went to Musgrove Willow on the Somerset levels, and she participated in assisting the weaver weave her own mother's coffin. And I can tell you, that really did bring those two people together in a wonderful way. Now, probably, I would say, nearly 4 years ago, I did a similar thing for a widow and her daughter. And I can remember them saying to me afterwards, we never talked so much about dad, husband, as when we were there with the weaver weaving that coffin.
That's a wonderful idea.
So it really does help to centre the concentration and to you know, make sure that you're thinking about that person that's recently departed.
That really is a wonderful idea. But you've also told me that recently you had a coffin painted in a particular fashion.
Yes, I've got one. I've still got it actually, because the story is quite simple, really. That this lady had a diagnosis that she had cancer and only had weeks and months, possibly months, to live. So she ordered up this coffin. It was a purple coffin with a pink trim, and it was exactly the right size for her. So, you know, I mean, these coffins are made to measure. You know, they really are. It's like buying a suit. So she wanted to see it, obviously, and I took it to her house, and me and her husband manhandled it into the front room. And would I take the lid off? So I took the lid off. I thought she could jump in to try it out. But anyway, in the end, she said, no, I don't want to keep it here in the house or in the garage, so would you look after it? And so I agreed to. Unfortunately, fortunately, really, when you think about it, they'd mixed up the patients. And she wasn't going to die at all. In fact, she was probably going to live a long time. So now I've got this this purple coffin with a pink trim that I can't use. And she's obviously had to pay for it. So that's an unusual one. But what I would say is that the woodland burial, where you got the tree, you know, the carbon replacement, is one thing. But there's also meadow burials. So just here in Somerset, in Somerton actually, there's a meadow burial site, which they don't do anything with it. It's just left as a meadow, and then twice a year the grass is cut. And so you can have a tree, but it won't be on top of the person. It will be somewhere around the edge of the field. And of course there are lots of different choices on the natural burial or the woodland burial, but they do insist upon a natural a material in terms of the coffin, so it does need to be a willow or something like that. And of course we do cardboard coffins as well as willow coffins, as well as you know, solid wood, chipboard, you name it. You can almost have a coffin made out of almost anything. And remember, you don't actually need a coffin.
A cardboard coffin just sounds like an Amazon parcel. I mean, is it more substantial than that, surely?
Well, these particular coffins are made of cardboard, but the base of it, even though it's still cardboard, is reinforced. So it will take the weight of a large man.
Right.
So,
Or woman.
Or woman, yeah, yeah. So yeah, they are interesting. Obviously, if you've got an extremely large person, then no, I wouldn't go down that road. There was another instance where we had a seafaring gentleman who wanted a natural pine wooden coffin. His relations wanted the rope from his ship used for the handles. So we'd take the rope out of the coffin and replace it with the rope from his ship. And then they, on the funeral, the grandchildren and children all wrote something or drew something on the coffin by way of a fond farewell. It was quite moving, really, watching them doing that. But that took quite a bit of the service up. But nevertheless, it was an important part for the people that were there, so that they could say goodbye in the way they wanted to say goodbye.
Yeah. It's certainly obvious from talking to you today, Rod, that the nature of burials, cremations, death, end of life has changed dramatically since the time when we perhaps started our lives. And what I've gathered from this is that the way in which we look at this particular event is one of a, as you say, a celebration of life, about recognising and remembering what that person meant to them, and that really there are no rules anymore. No,
that's what I always say to people. I say, look, remember, in the funeral business, provided it's legal and above board, there's only one rule, and that one rule is there are no rules. We must make sure that it allows you to move on and celebrate this person's life, send them off in the appropriate way, so that you can, when moving forward, know that you did absolutely the best you possibly could for that person. And instead of having a funeral, you're having a celebration of that person's life. And I think that's the best way to respect the person that's gone, is to celebrate their life. And every person that we've been dealing with their funeral, they've all had something marvellous to say, and it's always been of interest listening to the eulogy or their timeline. So yeah, that's how we deal with it. And I think also, you know, the misconception of a funeral director as being some miserable chap in a black suit. Obviously, lots of times when you have to be serious, you have to have a straight face, but you know, humour does help in every step of the way.
I had an interesting story when my father-in-law died at the age of 98. He'd spent a lifetime in the newspaper industry working with the Daily Mirror and the Sporting Life, and he used to have a regular bet on the horses right up until the Saturday before he died. My younger son Toby collected that bet, and he died on the Wednesday. My father-in-law died on the Wednesday, and he said, "You'll never believe it, but Pop's last bet was a winner." I said, well, he was always looking in that respect. He says, but what was really unusual is that the name of the horse was Safe Journey. And if we look upon the way in which a funeral director ensures that that final journey is a safe one, as safe as possible, that's the way I'd like to think that when I go, I'm in good hands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's quite all right, Paul. My pleasure.